We all know that printing money is very, very unhealthy for an economy. And every time a country has attempted to print money, it has led to disastrous consequences. For example, in the 1920s, the Weimar government printed over 500 billion paper marks, and in just 3 years, inflation rate in Germany got so bad that at its worst it took 4.2 trillion paper marks just to buy $1 similarly. When Venezuela printed 4 trillion bolivars by 2020, their inflation rate reached over 4,200%. And guess what? In 2020, the United States of America printed $3 trillion in just 3.5 months. But guess what? Strangely, while in other cases of currency printing, those countries experienced hyperinflation, in the case of the U.S. inflation barely touched 9%. In fact, this had a reverse effect whereby instead of inflation increasing just in the U.S., inflation actually got exported to other countries worldwide. Which means although the U.S. printed $3 trillion, inflation actually increased in other countries instead of just the U.S. in 2020. This is because of the U.S. dollar's secret superpower. If you understand this dollar superpower correctly, you'll be able to understand the most important ideas in the U.S. economy and in world trade itself. In this episode, we'll try to figure out if the U.S. economy is immune to printing money, how printing money caused inflation in India and other countries, and most importantly, what are the best study materials to help you understand this crazy economics of. Before you can understand how the U.S. prints so much money, you need to know about something called quantitative easing. This may sound very complicated, so let's try to explain it with a simple story. In the U.S., the Federal Reserve lends money to the Bank of America, which then lends money to people like you. Bank of America will lend this money to a Mr. Jackson at 8.15 interest and make a 2% profit. So let's say Bank of America gave a loan of $300,000 to Mr. Jackson at 8.15 interest now. When inflation spikes, if the Federal Reserve raises the interest rate from 6.15 to 6.25%. So even Bank of America will have to increase the home loan interest from 8.15 to 8.25 to make a profit. And if you look at the impact of this change in interest rate on loans, it's very, very significant. To give you an example of the same, let's say Mr. Jackson has taken out a home loan of $300,000 on a 20-year tenure and makes $8,000 per month. So if the interest rate goes from 7 in April 2022 to 9.25 in January 2023, the ME would go from $2,326, around $2,748, to repay the exact same loan within the original tenure, and this is an ME increase of 18%. So let's say Mr. Jackson's effective savings at the end of all expense is about $1,500. But now, after the increase in interest rates, when Mr. Jackson pays $422 extra in his EMIS, Mr. Jackson will only have $1,078 to spend, and in total for the entire year, his purchase power will decrease by $422 into 12 months. That is by $50-$64. So as you can imagine, when the Jackson family has $50-$64 less in their budget for the month in order to make up for this extra cost, the Jackson family will cut down on car purchases, they will cut down on outings, and they will cut down on all luxury purchases. Similarly, when home loan interests are increased all across America, millions of Americans will buy less cars, spend less on clothes, and spend less on vacations. So this way, the demand of products will go down. Eventually, the businesses will have to decrease our products to make it affordable for their customers. So if a car costs $200,000, thousands of people like Mr. Jackson will not consider buying a car because they can only offer to buy a car at $16,000, and that too with a car loan. So if Volkswagen was selling a car in the U.S. for $200,000, they will have to decrease the price to $160,000 so that more people could offer the car. But at the same time, the problem with Volkswagen is that even their cost of production have gone up. Semiconductor shortages have made semiconductors more costly. Due to the war between Russia and Ukraine, gas prices have gone up and shipping costs have gone through the roof. As a result, the cost of making the car has gone up so much that they can't sell it for less than $165,000. This is where our economy got stuck. Buyers don't have the money to buy things that cost more than $160,000, and sellers can't lower their price beyond $165,000 because the cost of production has increased. So in the market, if the buyers don't buy and the sellers can't sell, it's basically an economic nightmare because there is no money flowing into the market, and this is what recession looks like. Now the question over here is, what can the Federal Reserve do to fix this problem? Well, this is where we have something called quantitative easing. In simple words, quantitative easing is a method whereby the U.S. Federal Reserve lowers the interest rates and creates dollars in the economy to get the market working. Now this might sound complex, so let's try to understand this using a story. So just like Federal Reserve lent money to Bank of America, now they would print $100 billion and buy a bond from Bank of America worth $100 billion. So Bank of America gets $100 billion on the Federal Reserve at a dirt cheap interest of just 0.1. So now just like Bank of America increased the interest rate from 7 to 9.25 for people like Mr. Jackson, now they would decrease the interest rate for Mr. Jackson from 9.25 to just 4%. Why? Because now they are still able to make a 2% profit and they have a ton of money to lend to the people of America. And in a real world, if you see this graph, the Feds had a pretty stable interest rate swinging between 1.5 to 2.5% until 2020. But suddenly in 2020, after COVID happened and the economy was in a standstill, they printed money and the interest rates fell to as low as 0.05%. As a result, even the banks lowered the interest rates. This is the effect of $3 trillion of money printing in the U.S. So now let's come back to our story and see the impact of this money printing in the U.S. and the world economic now. You see, after the banks lower then interest rate, Mr. Jackson's home loan EMI would drop from $2,748 to $1,818. As a result, his savings will increase by $930 per month and by $11,160 for the entire year, which means just like Mr. Jackson, when millions of people see their savings increase by a large extent, their purchase power increases by which they can easily apply for a car loan to buy a car. So now the demand for the Volkswagen car increases so much that now even if VW sells the car at $205,000, people are still willing to buy it. Which is why, to seize this opportunity, VW would further increase the price to $220,000 because there is very high demand. So you see, this is how, through quantitative easing, the supply of dollars in the U.S. economy increases. This increases the purchase power of people like Mr. Jackson, and when millions of people see their purchase power increase, it increases the demand of product. Eventually, it increases the cost of goods in the U.S. Now the question over here is, in this story, the Federal Reserve printing money has increased the inflation in the U.S., right? Then why are we blaming the U.S. for increasing inflation in other countries? Well, guess what this is where the dark truth of U.S. printing dollars and the side effects of quantitative easing come in. So again, let's try to understand, how does quantitative easing in the U.S. increase inflation in other countries using a story. Now, like we saw in our example, when people like Mr. Jackson saw their home loan EMI drop and started to buy more and more vehicles, VW, which is a German company, could increase the price of the car from $200,000 to $220,000. But at the same time, in Germany, they are selling the same car at 200,000 euros. Now we're taking €1 to be $1, so that the calculations are simplified. All right? So coming back to our story, VW can sell the same car in the U.S. for $220,000 and can sell it in Germany for only €2,000, which is equal to $200,000. Now if you see, they are losing out on $20,000. Profit margin per car, right? So guess what? VW will start shipping more and more cars to us in order to meet the rising demand in the U.S. Why? Because VW is getting better profit margins with the American customers than the German customers. Now mind you, people, this story is assuming that the import duty on cars for us is very less, or a free trade agreement exists between these two countries and this product that we're talking about here. We are taking car because it's a relatable example. But this could be used for any product like tomatoes or even mangoes. So coming back to our story, as more and more cars get shipped to us, VW will increase the cost in Germany to €220,000, which is $220,000. So indirectly, VW is telling the Germans that if they can buy the car at €220,000, that's great. If not, then VW can anyway ship it to the U.S. So this is the first way by which the U.S. printing money increases the demand for imported goods, which increases the price of imported goods, and that eventually increases the price of the same goods in their domestic markets. And when this happens for multiple goods and services all across the market, inflation occurs in other nations and not just in the U.S. So if this is very clear to you, let's look at the second reason as to how US printing money results into currency depreciation, which, again, results into inflation. And this is something that you must have seen in the news a dozen times after US printed money in 2020. So as usual, let's try to understand this. Using the same Volkswagen story, you see even Volkswagen wants to sell its car in the US at $220,000. This is how the transaction will be carried out. There will be a VW German branch, there will be a Deutsche Bank which will dealing with the German branch of VW, then there will be an American bank, and then there will be the American branch of VW. So when VW US wants to import 100 VW cars from Germany, they will have to buy euros in order to make this purchase. But just like VW US, even BMW US, and Mercedes US branch would want to buy euros in order to import their European models to us, right? And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, the currency game will start when a VW representative, a Mercedes representative, and a BMW representative, all of them want to buy euros. Then the demand for euro will increase, so now Deutsche Bank will take advantage of this, and they will increase the price of dollar. Deutsche Bank will sell the same €1 at $1.03, but VW will not mind paying 3% extra because they're getting a 10 extra margin by selling cars in the US, right? But guess what? Same is the case with BMW also, whereby even they'll be willing to pay $1.03 to buy €1, because even they are getting a 10 extra margin. So again, Deutsche Bank would increase the price of euro to $1.05. And just like this, when different American branches try to buy euro from German banks, the price of euro would increase to $1.05. So do you see what is happening over here? Quantitative easing made it easier for Americans to buy things, which caused American model prices to go up. This increased demand for euros, which caused the value of the euro to rise against the dollar. Now, €1 is equal to $1.5. Now, when I say this, most people will say, hey, that's great. The value of the euro is actually rising against the dollar. What's the problem? Well, guess what? There is a very big exporting 10. If you change 10,000 euros to dollars, their product will cost $10,000 in the US. But unlike Volkswagen, which is a branded company, Forever 19 is competing in a commoditized clothing market against other American companies that are selling the same number of t-shirts to the same wholesaler for $10,000. If you look at this, you can see that the cost of exporting European goods has gone up because the value of the euro has gone up, which makes their products less competitive in the t-shirt market. In other countries, quantitative easing in the US causes inflation in two magical ways. As a result, the US can keep printing money in large amounts and not experience hyperinflation as long as the US dollar is the world's reserve currency and has complete control over the economy. If this is very clear to you, please hit the like button to make YouTube happy. If you want to see more business case studies like this, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks a lot.